Hey everybody, good morning. It is 8 o'clock Eastern, right on the nose. Good to see you. It is your friend James Shaw, and happy Monday. Thank you so much for choosing to wake up and be with us here in Pivot Shift Ahead. 275 weeks we have done this call, and I thank you for being part of it and being on it and participating in it, whether it's your first time on or you've been on all 275 weeks or something in between. I just honor and celebrate you this morning for choosing to make this part of your day. All month, we have been focused on listings. Look, listing inventory is up in every single state in this country year over year. And about a third of them, it's up significantly over pre-pandemic levels, especially the Southeast and the West. The Northeast and the Midwest, you're still below that time, but you're still up year over year. And so we just want to be taking more listings. We know that when we take more listings, that helps us reach our goals even faster. And so we've been focused on it all month. We started off with lead pipeline in the beginning of the month. Last week, it was all about that follow-up process and getting from lead to appointment. To this week is all about your listing presentation and your listing appointment. Because gosh darn it, if you're going to their house, you might as well walk away with a signed contract. And we're going to talk about how to do it. Today, I want to talk about maybe do we need to modernize our appointment process a little bit in today's market? Is that old school knock on the door, take a tour, sit at the table, review a CMA, and sign the contract? Is that out? I don't know. So we're going to talk about it and see how do we modernize the appointment. But before we do that, we'll do a couple of tell me something goods. Louise Weiss, good morning.
Good morning, friends. James Shaw, you hosted another amazing event in April called Elevate 2025, and one of your speakers was Alice Daly. She introduced us to this event called Table Builders. I signed up for it along with some of our other friends, and I had my first Table Builders event on Saturday, and it was amazing. And I just would like to say thank you for introducing us to all of this amazing material.
Thank you for coming, first of all, and then implementing, right? That's the whole point. You've been to everything we've ever done, and I honor you for it and celebrate you. And I'm glad that you're able to take the stuff we teach and put it into action. That's the point. All right, we'll take Matt and then Jan, and then we're going to get after it. Matt, good morning.
Good morning, James from Sweet Home, Alabama. Hey, tomorrow is my wife Cynthia's birthday. So if you guys know Cynthia, tomorrow wish her happy birthday. Thank you,
She is the
James.
life of the party too. I mean, she is the exciting one in the family, Matt. Right, the one with all the energy. So
For
happy
sure.
birthday to Cynthia, no doubt about it. Jan, good morning. You get the last one.
Good morning, James, and everyone. We had a wonderful weekend with Gary's Quantum Leap for our younger generations, 18 to 29. That went very successful, and I'm so grateful that I was there and we're helping the younger generations.
Jan, I'm glad you were there. Did you get to see Julia? Julia Sada, my team was there. Did you get to meet her?
No, I did
Oh, next
not. I
time.
did. I met Jenny.
You met Jenny Wallach. That's good. Her daughter Mia was there, and of course Julia was there. And who else? There were several. Savannah Campbell I saw was there. She's on this call a lot. There were some others as well. So Jan, glad you got to do it. Yeah, there's Savannah. She was there. There were many people. All right, let's get after it this morning. I want you to take listings, but I'm wondering, do we need to make some adjustments or changes to our listing appointment? Because our sellers today have access to all sorts of information, but they have less clarity. In fact, a lot of times when you have so much information, what you're lacking is clarity, and that our job is to refine that for them. They don't need you to show them the data. They've got the data. What they need you to do is make sense of it on a listing inventory, on a listing appointment. And here's why. Inventory is up. We talked about that. Inventory is up in every single state in the country. Now, it may not be up in your particular town, but if you just look from a national perspective, year over year, we have more homes on the market than we did a year ago. And in about a third of the country, we have more homes on the market now than we did going into the pandemic. Sellers are confused about the process. They're confused about timing. They're definitely confused about pricing. You are too. And so the agents who come in and confidently are able to provide clarity and a plan are the ones that are winning. So we're going to talk about the appointment. I think about the old school appointment and think about, and maybe this is still works. I don't know. You have to remember, listen, I get called out for it. I've been called a NAT, which is a non-active trainer. Someone called me a NAT once. Someone said that I've never sold real estate at a high level and I have no original ideas whatsoever. That was said about me. So I get it. So you might have to just forgive me for a second. But I think about the old school listing presentation. Walk through the house, sit at the kitchen table, present a CMA, show them your marketing, and ask for the listing. Were those the 5 steps of the listing presentation you learned in 1987? And by the way, that might still work. And my guess is that your tweaks happen within that. But I'm wondering, now you're probably doing more education on the front end, some pre-appointment education of some kind, which we addressed last week in our all week. Number 2, you probably have more visuals and you're showing them things maybe on a tablet or a computer, and you're showing them graphs and charts. You're collaborating on price instead of telling them a price, but you're coming to something. And that your sellers are getting a sense of your expertise. They can feel it from you. They don't want to just hear about how great you are. So maybe while we do this, you can put in the chat, what's something you've changed in your listing appointment over the last year or two? What are some adjustments you've made? I'd love to see some of that in the chat, because I think if we look at it like this, these are the 5 steps now, right? You do your pre-appointment setup, which again, we talked about that at length last week. Are you sending a packet? Are you sending a video? Both of those things came up on our calls last week. Are you including market data, testimonials, and even parts of your marketing? Then when you get there and you're doing this walkthrough, how are you using that to build rapport? Like we used to teach it, you just kind of go through by yourself, but are you using that time to build rapport and ask questions? Why is it you bought this home in the first place? What's your timeline? And ideally, when would you like to see a move happen? And various other questions we could talk about. Then we have a conversation that's focused on the seller. Can I walk you through and show you how we successfully get homes sold in today's market? You're highlighting key things. Days on market, we know, is the enemy for any listing. So we're walking through and teaching that. List to sale price ratios, what buyers expect right now. Are you collaborating with them on price, using a CMA to walk them through it instead of arguing with them, and involving the seller in the pricing conversation? Then when you sit down and review your marketing, are you talking about how your plan creates the most visibility? We talked about Julie Hess's plan. Julie Hess, where she's very strategic about when it goes in the MLS, when showings can begin. That's a plan. That's a strategy. Are you showcasing the videos that you use, how you're going to do professional photography, what you're doing on social media, and sharing that with them? Just pulling it right up on your phone or your laptop or tablet. And then talking about the next steps. Again, the timeline to go live and the strategy around that. What happens next? I'm just curious about how are you bringing your listing presentation into today's market, and what adjustments are you making? And let's listen to the ideas that people are going to share today and take some notes and build it from there. And then Inspire members, like we're doing in this series, we'll take it and create a list of best practices for you and get it out to you in the next week or so. Jenny, good morning.
Good morning. James, everything you just rattled off there is the process. It's everything we should be doing. So that's your checklist. And then each of us need to dive into which piece do I need to improve on this week, or where do I need to implement something new? And all my years of real estating and still working with sellers, even today, it goes back to the first and foremost, face-to-face, understanding their goals. Why are they needing to make a move? They wouldn't have called you if they just were like, oh, this is a really tough process and I want to put my family through a lot of pain and suffering by putting my home on the market, if they didn't have a really good reason. And so always, I think last week I was not on, but I got a tag. So I think you talked about pre-listing emails and messaging. And yes, we send one out with a video. Hey, we look forward to meeting and discussing the future sale of your home. In the meantime, go ahead and review all this stuff. So I'm looking to touch on all the different behavioral styles beforehand. Are they visual? Do they like data? They get all the info in advance. And yes, the walking around the house is still valid. That is the conversation and connection time. That's where I'm going to ask, oh, why did you update this room or this space? Or there's always a reason to why, and you can feel where they are with the connection to the property. So I like sitting down at the table. The CMA comes at the way end. And the first question I always ask is, hey, in a perfect world, how does this all go for you? Just tell me about that. and they tell me, and I take notes and I write down all the details so they know I care. They know I repeat back, I understand. And then you get into the storytelling, how that you are going to be able to help them achieve those goals. And then the number one highlight for right now, especially and always, this is a competition. So now let's look at where you must be strategically priced, the go to market pricing, where you get to win the contest to get you moved to this place by this time.
That's perfect. Jenny, didn't you once get a listing because you remember the dog's
I
name or
did.
something?
I actually was going to tell that story. One of a listing, these sellers interviewed 7 agents. They'd sold many homes before. I hardly did anything at the appointment besides understand their wants and needs. They knew how to sell a house. That wasn't the thing. And when I came back after I got the listing, the wife said, Jenny, do you know why you got it? And I said, why? And she goes, because you remembered my dog's name. And it was a really cute, cute dog. So write down the dog or the kids' names and use them. It works.
Really good. So again, we talked about this in kind of my timeline of things. I think we're doing more work on the pre-listing side on the front end than maybe we were, or, a few years ago. And that's the video. It's getting clarity on motivation. Maybe it's having them review some things. And again, we talked a little bit about that last week. So anyone who's looking for more on that, you can go back to last week's calls. Orly, good morning to you.
Good morning. So much good stuff, Jenny. So, yes, there's a lot that I still do the old-fashioned way, and there's some technology that I've added. So it's high touch, high tech. So by the high touch is having that conversation first at the table. So before I go through the house, I'm sitting down with them. But before I even get to the house, I Google them. I want to know their ages. I want to know their occupations. If I'm dealing with an attorney that's 73 years old, I'm probably going to be dealing with a downsizer that thinks he knows it all. So I want to know who they are. I Facebook them, see if we have mutual friends in the area. So, then I can kind of get a gist of who they are. If they only have cat pictures on their Facebook page, then I know, again, a different personality that I'm dealing with. And if they want high tech, I tell them about the digital footprint that I'm going to create for them and the 6,000 followers that I have on social media alone. And a lot of them are realtors who are watching my videos when I put your home on the market, and they're going to be getting the heads up in my coming soon campaign. So you go into the high tech, the high touch. To Jen's point is I do write down dogs or cats, because of the showings. You want to make sure people know appointment only, and the kids' names and ages and what they like. So does your kid like, dolls? Do they like, Paw Patrol? Because we make them labels with whatever, the kid likes with their name on it. Because I always explain to them, your child might be upset about the move, but in my experience, it's never about the move. It's always about their things. They want to make sure their things are going with them. So we're going to be making special labels for them for their boxes so that they can see that their things are going to land in the new house. So all of these things put together, besides obviously the presentation and going through the house. But as you're going through the house, I learned to tweak my language. What, if anything, are you going to do before we put the house on the market? And that gives me an indication if they are resistant to spending money and doing anything, or they're open, like, tell me everything and we're ready to do it. So I tweak that language because sometimes you lose a listing if they're overwhelmed by that process and they want someone that's going to sell it as is.
Good stuff. Orly, thank you. This is one to go back and watch. Dan, good morning.
Good morning again. Yes, what I've added this year is my 3 levels of marketing service. I have the basic, enhanced, and premier, and each level has a different compensation for that particular level, and still negotiable. With the basic, it's just your basic listing appointment and what I do in marketing, and then go over to the enhanced, I include the basic and then a few more items. And then when I go to premier, it's a basic plus the enhanced and then a few more. And I basically cover anyone charging a lower compensation up to a higher compensation.
Yeah, I think having a menu for compensation makes it a lot easier. It's like going to Starbucks. You can get a tall, a grande, a venti, a Trento, whatever you want, and it allows them to pick and choose what they want. And you've already decided you're okay with all of those fees. Dan, thank you so much. Deb, good morning. Deb? All right, Jolie.
There we are. There we
There
are.
you go. Y'all got to be
So-
quicker. Let's go, Deb. Come on.
Okay, so the thing that we're actually doing this right now because I was kind of a dual person last year. And so I guess the biggest thing that I'm putting into my packet now is leveraging you. The experience and the knowledge that we're getting through Inspire and our calls every morning has been something that has really pulled my people in and gave me credibility, as well as 34 years in the business. But, you know, that's been really important. I'm not very good at stating the things that I've done, but I put back in, I was in the top 10% in 2008 and 9 nationwide for the Prudential company I was with at that time. And what that really shows my clients is that I show up when things are really hard. And so that's been very helpful. So don't be afraid to, it seems to me like patting myself on the back, and I'm not good at that, but just be honest about where your credibility is.
Yep.
And don't be afraid to leverage it.
I agree with you. I also think you should. If you're on this call every day and you're part of the Inspire Collective, that should be in your presentations. You're masterminding with top agents around the country every day on what it takes to get homes sold in today's market. No doubt about it. Jolie, good morning.
Hi. So something that hasn't been mentioned yet. Well, I always my listing presentation is basically the same that it's been for 20 whatever years, where I walk in, I tour the house, sit down at the kitchen table, go through, and then I like to call it the 3 Ps: preparation, presentation, and price. So preparation is all the things that the seller may need to do. Jump in with some vendor recommendations, things like that. And then presentation, that's the marketing, that's the pictures and the video if needed and all of that. I do drone photography for almost every listing, especially just for that elevation, the front elevation picture. And I have before and afters of previous listings that I've taken where previously they didn't have that drone elevation, and just kind of showing how that's different. The other thing that I do that's more current and that's like out of the box a little bit with permission, I record the tour. So I use Otter on my phone and I record as we're walking through the house and they're telling me, because frankly, my handwriting stinks. And so I can't read my notes. So I do that so that way I can get a good picture for what's going on. Then I give that to my admin, who then writes the listing description, and we create the marketing materials from that.
That's great. I love that idea of doing that. And see the example of like how you're doing photography differently. That's going to be in your presentation and show the value of that. Do a before and after. There's all sorts of different things you could do. Jolie, thank you so much. We're talking about modernizing your listing appointment for today's market. Jess, what you got? Good morning.
Good morning. I think what's really important, and we didn't really touch on it a ton, is I like to go over different marketing strategies. And I think that's really key, and sales techniques in order to sell the home. So, we obviously analyze the market and what's going on in that price bracket, in that town, in that county, in the state, and compare it to see what we need to do in order to create a marketing strategy around that specific property, whether it's a luxury property, just a normal single family home, whatever that is. And we really build that plan and cater it to that specific client and curate it around that client. So we give them different options on how we can market their home. And we want to show them and build it with them so they feel like they're a part of the process when we do that. And it's really important to show them you're the expert that way, and why you might want to price a property in a specific area a certain way based on the current market conditions and the current competition. If you don't know your market and you don't know how to do that, get people in your office to help you, advise you, or start studying your market so that you know how to do that. Because if you're just saying, hey, we're going to do a 10,000 price drop, that might not be the right thing to do for that property.
Yeah.
And you might want to have that conversation right at that listing appointment and get that built in to your listing agreement from the get-go. Set that conversation right at that listing table too, because you want to be ahead of the market right from the get-go. You want to price it right from the get-go, because the market is shifting rapidly for many people. It hasn't hit here yet, but it will be hitting here.
Eventually.
So we're telling people that right now it's going to hit any time. So we want to prepare you now. So I think it's important to have those marketing strategy sessions. And I want to also give them the expectation of when they can expect to hear from us on a weekly basis, not just from the feedback conversations, but also strategy sessions. So if we need to readjust their expectations on what they are going to expect in terms of showings and pricing. We want to do that too.
It's all good. And it goes into what we're going to do tomorrow. We have only 4 calls this week because we're taking Thursday off and on our Juneteenth. So we've got 4 calls this week. And tomorrow we're going to talk about how you are using that market data. How is it you use market data to help them understand the market and build trust in you, and not use it as something that's overwhelming or yelling at them, but to use it as a trust builder and a way to understand the market. That's what we'll do on Tuesday. On Wednesday, we will talk about objection handling, and we'll take care of kind of the top objections. I'm going to list with another agent. Somebody else said they could get me more money. Will you lower your fee? And we'll spend a little bit of time on objection handling. Again, Thursday we're off for Juneteenth, and then Friday we'll do your follow-up after. So you leave the listing presentation, you leave the listing appointment without a signed contract. What's that follow-up play look like? So that's our plan for this week, and I hope it adds immense value to you. Thank you to everybody who shared, and thanks to everybody who was on. You got your inspiration. Go put in the perspiration. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Jen.